Howdy, folks. This is Henry again. You're probably used to hearing my brother Roscoe's voice around here on Delta Deep, but uh, he's not here today again. Now, Roscoe told me I didn't have to do this, but, well, I thought it'd be right to, keep the show on the road, so to speak, kind of like a duty. Yeah, that's the word. So here I am, trying to fill in his big shoes. Now, I ain't got one of Roscoe's fancy pre-made scripts in front of me. Nope. Just got a bunch of these little note cards I scribbled on last night. So bear with me, folks, as I try to navigate this radio ship. Oh boy, I'm rambling again, ain't I? Well, let's get this show on the road, shall we? Welcome to another episode of Delta Deep. Let's dive right in, I suppose. Now I got a letter from a listener named Ben. Ben writes, "Dear Roscoe, longtime listener here. I figured I'd give back with a story. This is from a few years back when I was living in the city. It was late, way past midnight, and I was heading home from a friend's place. I decided to take the train instead of hailing a cab, I guess, to save a couple of bucks, City living can really drain the wallet. The streets were pretty much deserted, with the exception of a few late night revelers. The sodium streetlights gave everything an eerie orange glow, and long shadows stretched across the concrete. As I walked towards the train station, I noticed a figure standing under one of the street lights in the distance. He was just a silhouette, but something about him made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something felt off. I shook it off as just my mind playing tricks on me. After all, it was late and I was tired. Oh, Ben, buddy, I gotta ask, why didn't you take a cab at that point? It sounds like the opening scene of a horror movie to me. Anyway, let's continue. As I approached the train station, I noticed it was in worse shape than I remembered. Paint was peeling off the walls, and a few of the overhead lights were flickering or had gone out entirely. I bought my ticket from the automated machine, the robotic voice echoing in the otherwise silent station. There was a certain stillness to the place that made me feel uneasy. It was as if I had stepped into a different world, where time had come to a standstill. A sort of liminal space, I shook off the feeling and found a spot to wait for the train. In the silence, I distracted myself with a little game on my phone. Angry Birds, I think. Suddenly I felt a chill. I looked up from my phone, scanning the area. Then I saw him. The figure from before. He was now standing in a darkened part of the station, just outside of the reach of the nearest working light. The figure was tall, and from what I could make out in the dim light, he was wearing a long coat, a hat pulled low over his face. His hands were buried deep in his pockets, making his stance appear casual, almost non-threatening, but there was something off about him. He didn't move, didn't shift weight or look around, just stood there, still as a statue. I tried to ignore him. I did. Went back to my game, telling myself I was just being paranoid, that he was just another late-night traveler waiting for a train. But I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. It was like someone was running a cold finger down the back of my neck. I looked up again, and he was still there, unmoving. But something had changed. His head was tilted slightly, as if he was looking straight at me. I couldn't see his eyes, but I could feel them on me like a predator sizing up its prey. You know what, folks? I think this is a good time for a break. I need a moment to gather my thoughts, make sure we're all ready for the next part. So we'll be right back. Please stay tuned, okay? Hello. Hope y'all are still listening. All right, back to Ben's letter. It goes like this. His head was tilted slightly, as if he was looking straight at me. I couldn't see his eyes, but I could feel them on me, like a predator sizing up its prey. I couldn't hold his gaze for long, so I looked away. Sweat was starting to trickle down the back of my neck, and I decided to hide out in the bathroom until my train arrived. It wasn't due for another half hour, and I was willing to wait it out in the train station restroom if it meant avoiding that creepy figure. I ducked into one of the stalls, locking the door behind me and trying to control my breathing. The silence in the bathroom was deafening, only interrupted by the faint hum of the overhead lights and the drip from a leaky faucet. Then I heard it, the bathroom door creaking open. Footsteps echoing on the cold tile floor. Someone had come in. They didn't enter a stall or even go to the sink. They just stood there in the middle of the room, silent as the grave. I peeked through the tiny gap in the stall door. All I could see was a tall figure, the same long coat, the same hat. Then, after what felt like an eternity, they turned and left. I didn't dare leave the stall until I was sure they were gone. I checked the time and realized that my train should be arriving soon. I figured if I could just get on that train, I would be safe. So I left the bathroom and returned to the platform. The station was still empty, and I couldn't spot the figure anywhere. I breathed a sigh of relief, my heart finally starting to slow down. Just then, the train pulled up to the station, its doors sliding open with a hiss. It was just as deserted as the station, except for a single figure sitting at the far end of the carriage. Their back was to me, but I recognized the long coat and hat, and it was the same figure. I froze for a moment, torn between getting on the train and finding another way home. Then I decided to play it safe. I stepped back from the train, watched the door slide shut, and the train pull away from the station. Quickly pulling out my phone, I dialed a taxi service and gave them my location. I didn't care about the cost. I just wanted to get home safe. And as the taxi pulled up, I couldn't help but look over my shoulder one last time, half expecting to see that figure emerging from the shadows. Oh, Lord. That's enough to make your heart skip a beat or two. Ben, you've got nerves of steel, my friend. Anyways, Ben finishes with, when I got home, I locked all the doors, checked all the windows, and finally managed to fall asleep after a couple of hours. The next morning, I turned on the news while making breakfast and nearly dropped my coffee mug. There was a report of a train derailment that happened last night. The same line I was supposed to take home. They said no one was hurt, but it was a little too close for comfort. I don't know if it was my train, and I don't know if the figure I saw had anything to do with it. But after everything that happened, it seemed a little too strange to be a coincidence. Anyway, I hope all is well on your end, Roscoe. I've been a long-time listener of Delta Deep, and your tales of the strange and unexplained always keep me entertained on these late-night shifts. I've even started sharing your podcast with my coworkers. They're hooked. And how's Wyatt doing? We haven't heard about him in a while. I hope my story makes the cut. It's not supernatural or anything, but it sure did give me the chills. Stay safe out there, Roscoe. Well, Ben, thanks for your submission. I certainly enjoyed your tale, and I'm sure Roscoe does too, from wherever he's listening from. Now, I need to prepare for the next segment, so we'll be right back after a little while. Stay tuned, folks. All right, welcome back, folks. Now, since I don't have one of Roscoe's stories for his weekly tale, I thought, maybe I'll tell one of my own. Now, you have to bear with me. I'm not as good as Roscoe at this, but I'll do my best. So, there was this one time, it must have been around 78 or 79, I think. Yes, it was definitely before the 80s, because I remember I was still driving that old Mack truck of mine, the one with the busted air conditioner. Anyway, it don't matter. So it was this one night, and I was driving on this long stretch of road, right? A very desolate part, not much around. You know the type. Not even a billboard in sight. And it was late, really late. The kind of late that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. And as I'm driving, I see this gas station up ahead. It's the only source of light in miles. Now I needed to fill up, so I decided to stop. You know, it's always a good idea to fill up when you can in those parts. You never know when you'll get another chance. So I pull up into the station and it's empty. No other cars, no people, just me and the bright lights of the station in the middle of nowhere now. It's pretty normal for these stations to be empty at that hour, but it still had this eerie feeling to it, you know. And as I'm filling up my truck, I hear this voice. Not sure where it's coming from, but it's clear as day. That's where things started to get a little strange. Now, it wasn't coming from any speaker or anything, you know. It was like it was coming from the woods nearby. And it was a woman's voice, sounded young. I remember that distinctly. And here's the weird thing, it kept repeating the same phrase over and over again, like a broken record. Now, I'm not sure what it was saying exactly because it was a little too distant and I was trying to focus on filling up my truck, you know? But it was strange, right? I mean, it was the middle of the night in the middle of nowhere. And I hear a woman's voice coming from the woods, but, you know, at that time, I just chalked it up to my tired mind playing tricks on me. Oh, I finished filling up the truck and decided to check out the gas station. The lights were on, but it didn't look like there was anyone inside. That's when I noticed the door was ajar. Now, I thought maybe the attendant had stepped out for a bit, but when I went inside, it was a complete mess. It looked like a bear had gone through the place, you know. Snack wrappers and soda cans were strewn all over, shelves knocked over. It was recent, too, like someone or something had ransacked the place just a few minutes ago. Now, I'm not a coward, but I'm also not stupid. I knew something was off, so I decided to wait it out in my truck. Oh, before I forget, this gas station was real quaint, you know? It was one of those old school places with the outdated soda logos and wooden shelves. I remember there was this really old gumball machine by the door, too. It had those gumballs that were probably as old as me. So I hightail it back to my truck, right? And I'm sitting there waiting to see if anyone would come out of the station. That's when I hear it. This voice, like someone calling from a distance. It was this odd, repetitious phrase that it just kept echoing like it was on loop. Now, I don't remember the exact words, but it sounded like, how can I help you? Now, I'm telling you, it was weird. The voice just kept getting quieter and quieter, and that's when I see it. This, uh, this large, hairy figure lurking behind the trees. I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but it was real. I swear it was real. As I got a closer look, I could see its face. It was this pale white with this grin. So I did what any sane person would do. I turned the truck on and I drove as fast as I could out of there. Now, I don't know if Roscoe told this story before, but he makes it sound a lot more dramatic than it really was. But the thing is, I swear it was real. All of it. The gas station, the voice, the figure, everything. Anyways, that's my story. I hope it was entertaining for y'all. Let's move on to our next segment, shall we? All right, folks. Well, since I can't exactly work Roscoe's fancy music stuff here, I thought we'd take a little detour tonight. I got a few local newspapers here. Figured I'd share some of the goings on around town, you know, keep you all up to date with the happenings here in the FA. So let's see here. First up, we've got the annual quilt show. Apparently, it's coming up next weekend over at the community center. Now, you know, I'm not one for quilting myself, but I hear it's a pretty big event around these parts. Looks like there's going to be a bunch of local vendors selling their handcrafted quilts and such. Good chance to get out and support some local artisans, you know. And looks like there's also going to be a potluck dinner afterwards. So if you're planning on going, don't forget to bring a dish. Now, if you've never been to one of these potlucks before, let me tell you, they don't mess around. I remember one year, old Mrs. Abernathy brought this apple pie that was just, well, it was something else, I'll tell you that much. So, there's been a few recent arrests in here in the county. I see here a Mrs. Margaret Smith got picked up for too many parking tickets, it looks like. Yeesh. You'd think after the first 5 or so you'd start to learn your lesson, right? I guess not everyone's a quick learner. And, oh, here's another one. Mr. Jen. Well, you know what? That's probably enough of that. No need to air everyone's dirty laundry, right? Let's move on to some other news. Did you hear about the old Miller farm? Finally getting that renovation it's been needing. I tell you, that place has been falling apart for years now. The barn's got more holes in it than a slice of Swiss cheese. But it seems like the Millers have finally gotten the funds together to start fixing it up. It's about time, if you ask me. Also looks like there's going to be a car wash fundraiser at the high school this weekend. The senior class is raising money for their graduation party. Always like those things, seeing all the kids out there working together. And let's face it, after all this spring pollen, our cars could probably use a good washing. Here's a bit of a heart warmer. The local animal shelters just announced that they've had a record-breaking month for adoptions. That's some good news, right? Always nice to hear about critters finding a home. Good on you, folks. In other news, the annual town fair is coming up in a few weeks. They're still looking for volunteers to help set up and run the stalls. So if you've got some time to spare and want to help out the community, well, why not give them a hand? And oh, this one's a bit out of left field. Apparently, there was a UFO sighting on the outskirts of town a couple of weeks ago. The report was made by a Mr. Never mind, doesn't matter. Probably just some kids with a drone or something. But you never know, right? Now that's all we got for the local news. Well, I guess we made it to the end, eh? Another episode of Delta Deep in the books. I'm not gonna lie, I'm missing Roscoe as much as you are, and I can't wait for him to be back in this chair where he belongs. This radio stuff, it's harder than it looks, let me tell you. So, I hope you got something out of tonight's stories and my little dive into the local news. I've been trying to do my best to fill Roscoe's shoes, and I appreciate you, bearing with me. And speaking of Roscoe, he sometimes tries to end the show with something profound or funny. But me, all I can think to say is this. Let's all take a moment to, appreciate the folks we love. They're important more than we often realize. Life's too short not to let them know. So this is Henry signing off for the night. Thank you for tuning in to Delta Deep. I hope you all have a safe and pleasant evening, and we'll see you next time.